All right, everyone. Due to YouTube and Facebook both censoring all mention of the flute tutor, I think you know what I'm talking about, you should definitely pay attention to today's BitChute exclusive. It'll be up after the 3 normal videos as usual. By the way, I do those. Link in the comments area. I'm going to pin it to the BitChute channel itself because that's an important topic. This will be, at least so far, my most important BitChute exclusive. Now, on to different news, more flippant, more enjoyable to talk about because it doesn't deal with heavy-handed deep state censorship. Elizabeth Warren tweeting the other day on the topic of healthcare. This has become her main pitch. Warren believes that universal healthcare is how she's going to be nominated and elected. Somehow she's going to out Bernie Sanders by stealing his plan, tweaking it a little, and being less honest about the tax impacts. She's going to out Biden by not affixing the term socialism to it. Elizabeth Warren came out, and she used the following label. This is hot on the heels of her accepting some endorsement or award or something from some group that represents like black and lesbians or something, literally like a lobbying group that represents probably 12 people in the country, like one of those really small niche wedge issue related groups. It's sort of like the white codfish totaling hunters of southern Nebraska endorsing Donald Trump. So Elizabeth Warren says everyone has a right to their gender-reaffirming healthcare options and culturally appropriate healthcare and stuff. Like really going over the edge into third waverism and social justice warriordom. I'm thinking to myself, how can this old waspish individual possibly think that pandering to these demographics is going to be helpful? She has never been on the forefront of any form of social progressivism until the last few years. She was a Republican up through, I think, the end of the 1990s, literally had an R after her name, switched parties inexplicably. I don't know what that was all about. Probably she decided she wasn't getting enough corporate donations because she was pretending to be for small government at the time. And she, over the last 2 years, has transformed herself, and I predicted this in 2015 would happen, that she would run and do this. She would try to maneuver herself into a position to be not as far left as Sanders. Basically try to be a pretend Sanders without the optics of socialism. She would cast herself as this middle-of-the-road, missing link candidate between the neoliberals on one side, who have become unpalatable to the youth. They've become unpalatable to the far left, which is a vocal minority, but it is very vocal, and that does matter. It does count in politics. Turnout matters. The ability of people to harangue online, certainly as we see with certain Trump superfans and creators, definitely matters. She looked at that. She said, I want to get these people on board my campaign while not alienating the corporations. She is therefore, what she's doing is, with a wink and a nudge, she took massive amounts of corporate money for her last Senate bid. She then turned around, told them, I'm not going to be able to take your money at least through parts of the primaries unless things really go bad for 2020. I need to appear grassroots so that I can congeal some of the far leftists behind me. Her next goal, she'll probably start taking the corporate money at some point. But now it no longer matters because she's outmaneuvered everyone other than maybe Sanders and a few others that don't matter on some issues. She's managed to find her sweet spot. She believes that healthcare is her winning issue. The problem is she's virtue signaling and purity spiraling off into la la land now, saying that people need gender reaffirming healthcare options. So if a woman walks in and says, my dick isn't working, I need, something to enhance my I need Viagra, and the doctor says, I can't, what are you talking about? Check your privilege, shitlord. You have to give me the little blue pill or little purple pill or whichever it is, even if it won't do anything and might kill me. You have to affirm whatever I say. You'll walk into the doctor and say, well, I'm non-binary. My chromosomes don't matter. Now, to be clear, again, as I always have to disclaim, I do not care what people identify as, how they dress, who they fuck, things like that don't matter. That's small potatoes. But to fool with the medical apparatus and have taxpayers funding the confusion that will necessarily result. We've already seen the result of this, like that time that dude from Florida pretended to be a woman in order to go to a female prison after setting a woman on fire inside a Taco Bell. This is a person who takes no hormones, does not live or address themselves in any meaningful way as female. It is clearly a male individual who's seeking to go to a female prison, probably thinking he can do some illicit things while in there. Because of the structure of the law and PC culture the way it is, you will have freaks and weirdos doing that who aren't actually transgendered. And as far as culturally appropriate healthcare options, what are you talking about? So if a person has a different shade of skin or comes from a slightly different background, all of a sudden the medicine that they require is massively different. Now there is something to be said for that within genetics, as a much newer field of medical study, because our abilities there are still quite primitive. Trust me, 20 years from now they'll be unrecognizable. They'll be fucking cyborgs walking around probably. With gene editing and things like that, we have to understand, for instance, black populations are more likely to exhibit sickle cell anemia. It's simply, due to that. I think, what is it, in Jewish populations, I think it's Tay-Sachs, if I remember correctly, is a genetic disorder due to consanguineous marriage in certain hyper-religious communities. If I remember correctly, I could be getting the disorder wrong. That's true. But other than that, do you really need to say, well, this person comes in, I need to make sure that this hospital has a voodoo practitioner, taxpayer funded for people that want it? Because that appears to be the sort of pandering that's being suggested here. We're not talking about, hey, the doctor shouldn't racially discriminate. Okay, that's understood. That's fucking obvious. The doctor shouldn't call people racial slurs or give them less care because they're a certain color. Yeah, that makes sense, but that's already the way things are. Who lacks access to culturally appropriate healthcare? What are you talking about? It's poorly defined. And when you get things poorly defined, by the way, by politicians, it's a selling point. It's a pandering point. Trump does this too. Let's be friggin' honest, and he's actually good at it, unlike Elizabeth Warren, who, she's not exactly the most charismatic individual, if you know what I'm saying. Trump has empty slogans up the ass. Make America great again. Well, of course, that requires actual platforms. I happen to agree with parts of them and think that many of them are positive, but the slogan itself is totally empty. Nothing that Warren is suggesting here actually addresses the issues she's even talking about. I want people to have culturally sensitive healthcare. Okay, how is raising taxes on virtually all people in the country and establishing a government monopoly over the healthcare and pharmaceutical industries actually doing that? By the way, those pharma companies that she takes money from too are always stealing botanical and fungal resources from the third world, patenting things and fucking bringing back specimens from some jungle somewhere without the native people benefiting one iota. Oh, that's very sensitive, Miss Warren. It's 1/1024th sensitive, I suppose. Give Viagra to females. Nothing could possibly go wrong here. There's no problem at all. By the way, in the future, transgenderism in the most literal sense will be possible with genetic studies. Yeah, it's certainly in the future it'll be possible through some maneuver to be able to replace all the cells in the body with cells that no longer have or do have a Y chromosome, and maybe even build like artificial dicks and vaginas with a lattice work of genetic material. But right now that's not really what happens, and that's, as far as healthcare is concerned, actually of import. It's not because people are trying to discriminate. There is reasonable accommodation made. Nobody's sitting there trying to ridicule people for their decisions unduly. I mean, come on. There are certain things. It's like if you would give period cramp relief pills to some, dude because he says, well, I have a pain in my side. It must be my male period. Well, that's just not the case. But I guess, according to Elizabeth Warren, the taxpayers will be paying for those pills anyway. What that accomplishes, other than collective delusion, I'm not exactly sure. You can look at the situation and say, you have pity for people, understanding for them. You don't want to see them discriminated against, but I mean, at the same time, Elizabeth Warren, of all people, pandering like this in a totally non-scientific way, this is not how you're going to fix that cultural or societal issue. It's just not. It's impossible. By the way, transgendered people pay taxes too, enjoy having no fucking money left. When you do get your male period, you're not going to be able to afford all the Ben and Jerry's that Bernie Sanders wants to give to you anymore to cry it out. It's just not going to happen. That's about all. Peace out.